Narcissism. Father. Simple exercises for self-liberation. Tools and strategies to emotionally and mentally free yourself from the power of your narcissistic father and ultimately lead a self-determined life. Your path to freedom begins now. Breaking free from the shackles of a narcissistic father is not an easy process, but it is a necessary step on the path to a fulfilling life. Your path to freedom begins now, the moment you decide to shed the burden of this painful relationship. This decision is the first step toward regaining control over your own life and discovering your true self. Throughout this book, you'll learn how to identify your father's influence on your thoughts, feelings, and actions. You'll understand that the negative beliefs you hold about yourself, that you may not be enough, that you constantly need to prove your worth loving and accepting, are not inherently true, but were instilled through the distorted lens of your narcissistic parent. You'll also learn how to set boundaries and create the emotional space you need to heal. The healing process begins with deciding that you are worthy of living a life free from manipulation and abuse. It takes courage to face the deep-seated wounds you may have ignored for years. Yet it's this courage that will lead you to a new chapter in your life. Every step on this path to freedom brings you closer to your authentic self. The transformation won't happen overnight, but it is possible if you consciously choose to take responsibility for your own life and break free from the shackles that have held you back. What is narcissism? Narcissism is a complex and often misunderstood psychological concept. At its core, it is a profound personality trait characterized by excessive self-centeredness, a strong need for admiration, and a lack of empathy for others. People with narcissistic tendencies, or those with narcissistic personality disorder (NPD), tend to prioritize their own needs and desires above those of others. They often have an inflated sense of self-importance and expect others to recognize this and treat them with admiration and respect. Narcissism can occur on a spectrum ranging from mild narcissistic tendencies to a full-blown personality disorder. It's important to understand that not everyone with narcissistic traits has a disorder. Many people can exhibit narcissistic traits without it significantly affecting their lives or the lives of those around them. Narcissistic personality disorder, on the other hand, is a more serious and deep-rooted mental illness that has a significant impact on interpersonal relationships. Narcissism is often characterized by a deep inner sense of insecurity and inferiority complex. Many narcissistic people use their self-aggrandizement as a defense mechanism to hide these insecurities and protect themselves. They create a mask of invulnerability and perfection, which is, in reality, very fragile. When their facade is threatened, be it through criticism, rejection, or a loss of control, they can react in an extremely defensive, aggressive, or manipulative manner. In relationships, narcissism often manifests itself through an imbalance of power and control. The narcissist sees other people primarily as tools to serve them. This can lead to emotional abuse, manipulation, and exploitation, especially in close relationships such as those between parents and children. The narcissistic father, for example, often puts his own needs above those of his children, expects unconditional adoration, and has little to no empathy for the child's emotional needs. Another characteristic of narcissism is the lack of genuine compassion. Narcissistic people are often unable to understand or consider the feelings of others. They are fixated on themselves and their own needs and view other people's emotions as irrelevant or distracting. This often leads to tension and conflict in interpersonal relationships. The effects of narcissism are far-reaching. People in close relationships with a narcissist often suffer from feelings of worthlessness, isolation, and emotional exploitation. Dealing with a narcissist can be extremely stressful, as they tend to manipulate others and distort their reality to satisfy their own needs. Overall, narcissism is a profound psychological phenomenon that is often associated with significant emotional pain for those surrounded by narcissistic individuals. It is important to understand and recognize a narcissist's behavior in order to protect yourself and take appropriate steps to distance yourself or heal. The psychology of narcissism. The psychology of narcissism is best explained by the interplay of various biological, psychological, and social factors. In clinical psychology, narcissism is often viewed as a deep-rooted personality disorder that originates in early childhood. Several factors play a role during a child's development that can increase the risk for developing narcissistic traits. A fundamental aspect of narcissistic psychology is distorted self-perception. Narcissistic individuals often have an overly inflated image of themselves. This exaggerated self-image serves as a defense mechanism against deep insecurities and feelings of inadequacy they may feel deep within. These insecurities often arise from early childhood experiences in which the child was either overindulged or constantly had to strive for approval and love in order to feel loved and accepted. Children raised by parents who prioritize their own needs over those of the child often develop narcissistic tendencies as a coping strategy. When a child learns that they will only be loved or appreciated if they meet certain expectations, they may begin to develop an overly positive facade to secure that love and acceptance. This leads to a distorted self-image and a deep fear of failure or rejection. The psychology of narcissism is also influenced by a lack of genuine emotional connection and empathy. Narcissists are often unable to form a deep, authentic connection with others because of their need to protect themselves. Their lack of empathy is no accident. It protects them from the pain that comes with emotional intimacy and vulnerability. They avoid deep relationships because they fear exposing their own insecurities and thus becoming vulnerable. Furthermore, the social context plays a significant role in the development of narcissism. We live in a society that often prioritizes self-aggrandizement, individualism, and external success over collective values and deeper emotional connections. Social media, pop culture, and the constant emphasis on success and fame contribute to reinforcing and even rewarding narcissistic traits. In a world that constantly strives for perfection, people who develop narcissistic tendencies may be viewed as successful and confident, even though their inner struggles remain hidden. The psychology of narcissism is therefore complex. It's not just about superficial self-indulgence, but about deep-seated emotional problems and a fragile sense of self. Narcissism is often a defense strategy to protect and cover up inner wounds. The key to treatment and healing lies in recognizing and working on these underlying insecurities. This often requires intensive therapeutic support to reshape the fragile self-image and build healthy, authentic relationships. How narcissism develops in the family. Narcissism can be deeply rooted in a family's dynamics. In many cases, narcissism is passed down from generation to generation, as children often adopt their parents' behavioral patterns and incorporate them into their own relationships and families. Narcissistic parents create an environment characterized by control, manipulation, and emotional abuse, leading to serious effects on their children's development and emotional well-being. One of the main causes of narcissism in families is dysfunction in the parent-child relationship. Children who grow up in an environment where they don't receive the emotional support, love, and recognition they need often develop coping strategies to deal with these deficits. Narcissistic parents are often emotionally unavailable or use their children to satisfy their own emotional needs, leading to an imbalance in the relationship. In narcissistic families, there are often two types of children: the golden child and the scapegoat child. The golden child is overly idealized and receives praise and attention as long as they meet the narcissistic parents' expectations. This child often develops narcissistic traits themselves, as they learn that their own needs and desires always come first. The scapegoat child, on the other hand, is blamed for everything that goes wrong in the family. They are criticized, belittled, and emotionally neglected, often leading to low self-esteem and deep emotional wounds. Another hallmark of narcissistic families is a lack of emotional connection. Narcissistic parents are often unable to respond to their children's emotional needs because they are so focused on themselves. This emotional distance leads the children to learn to suppress their own emotions and ignore their needs. This suppression can lead to a range of mental health problems, including depression, anxiety, and difficulty forming healthy relationships in adulthood. The lack of healthy boundaries is also a common problem in narcissistic families. Narcissistic parents often lack clear boundaries between themselves and their children, leading to identity entanglement. They often view their children as extensions of themselves rather than as independent individuals. This leads to the child's needs and desires being ignored or suppressed, while the parent's desires take center stage. In such family structures, children are often pushed to fulfill their parents' unfulfilled dreams or emotional needs. They grow up in an environment where their individuality is not encouraged but suppressed to meet the parents' narcissistic needs. The way narcissism develops in a family also depends heavily on parental parenting styles. Narcissistic parents may be overly critical or degrading, which destroys the child's self-esteem, or they may be overly indulgent and pampering, leading to a distorted self-image in the child. Both parenting styles contribute to the development of narcissistic tendencies or other emotional problems. Another factor contributing to the development of narcissism in the family is the lack of role models for healthy emotional relationships. Children learn how interpersonal relationships work through observation and imitation. However, in narcissistic families, they typically do not experience authentic, empathetic, and loving relationships. Instead, they view manipulation, emotional blackmail, and abuse as normal components of relationships. These dysfunctional patterns shape their perceptions and behaviors in their own future relationships, perpetuating the cycle of narcissism. The issue of control also plays a central role in narcissistic families. Narcissistic parents often exert immense control over their children, be it emotionally, psychologically, or even physically. This control is aimed at keeping the children dependent and directing their actions to conform to the narcissistic parents' expectations. The children grow up feeling that their own needs and desires are unimportant and that they will only be loved and accepted if they submit to the will of the narcissistic parent. This control and manipulation can lead to difficulties in developing their own identity. They lose confidence in themselves and their ability to make their own decisions because they have learned that their choices are always evaluated and manipulated through the lens of the narcissistic parent. This constant external control can lead to a feeling of powerlessness and helplessness in adulthood, making it difficult for the affected person to lead an independent life. It's also not uncommon for children from narcissistic families to have difficulty setting healthy boundaries because they were never taught what healthy boundaries are. They may have trouble saying no or be easily manipulated and exploited because they are accustomed to putting the needs of others above their own. This learned behavior can make them vulnerable to toxic relationships in adulthood. Narcissism often develops in families through a combination of emotional neglect, abuse, a lack of emotional connection, and unhealthy power structures. These factors create an environment in which narcissistic tendencies can flourish and in which children learn that manipulation, control, and emotional distance are normal. The cycle of narcissism in families can only be broken if the affected individuals become aware of their experiences and actively work to change these dysfunctional patterns. This often requires professional support in the form of therapy or counseling to heal the emotional wounds and develop healthy, authentic relationships. It is a difficult process, but it is necessary to protect the next generation from the harmful effects of narcissism and to build healthy family structures. The narcissistic father in focus. A narcissistic father can influence his children's lives in many ways. While the image of a father is traditionally associated with care, love, and support, a narcissistic father represents the opposite. Instead of care, he displays manipulation. Instead of love, there is self-aggrandizement. And instead of support, there is emotional blackmail. The narcissistic father sees himself as the center of the family universe and expects unconditional recognition and admiration from his children and everyone around him. Narcissistic fathers often use manipulative techniques to maintain control over their children and secure their own position of power. These fathers are often extremely charismatic and appear outwardly confident, competent, and sometimes even loving. But behind this facade lies a deep need for control and self-affirmation, which often comes at the expense of their children's emotional health. A narcissistic father may appear charming and caring at first glance, especially in public. However, in private, a different picture often emerges. He tends to humiliate, devalue, or constantly pit his children against each other. He cannot tolerate criticism and tends to distort reality to always appear to be the one in the right. This dynamic leaves children feeling confused and insecure, often torn between two contradictory realities. Narcissistic fathers also tend to view their children as extensions of themselves. They expect them to fulfill their own unfulfilled desires and dreams. Instead of viewing their children as independent individuals with their own needs and desires, narcissistic fathers use their children to boost their own egos and portray themselves in a better light. This can leave the children overwhelmed and emotionally exhausted as they constantly try to live up to their father's unrealistic expectations. Control over the family and interpersonal relationships is at the heart of a narcissistic father's behavior. He often uses various manipulation techniques to ensure that power always remains in his hands. These manipulation techniques can be subtle or extremely obvious, but the goal is always the same: to maintain control over his children's emotions and actions. Typical behavioral patterns and manipulation techniques. Narcissistic fathers use a variety of behavioral patterns and manipulation techniques to maintain their position of power within the family. The most common include 1. Gaslighting. Gaslighting is a psychological manipulation technique in which the narcissistic father attempts to distort his child's perception of reality. He misrepresents events, denies that certain things happened, or claims the child has misremembered them. The goal is to make the child doubt themselves and their perceptions, causing them to become dependent on the narcissistic father for the truth. 2. Emotional blackmail. Narcissistic fathers often use emotional blackmail to control their children's behavior. This can be done through guilt, fear, or even withdrawal of love. An example of emotional blackmail might be the father saying, "If you really loved me, you would do this for me." In this way, the father forces the child to ignore their needs and submit to the father's wishes in order to avoid losing the father's love or approval. 3. Triangulation. Triangulation is a manipulation technique in which the narcissistic father involves a third party, often another child or a parent, in the conflict to maintain control. For example, he might favor one child to make the other jealous or stir up conflict between siblings. The goal is to play the children off against each other to ensure that power always remains with him and the children do not gang up on him. 4. Idealization and devaluation. A narcissistic father tends to idealize his children when they meet his expectations and immediately devalue them when they fail or don't conform to his wishes. These extremes, praise and contempt, create an unstable emotional environment in which the children never know where they stand. They are constantly striving to win their father's favor, leading to a deep sense of insecurity. 5. Projection. Projection is another common behavior among narcissistic fathers. It involves projecting their own negative traits or flaws onto their children. For example, a narcissistic father might accuse his child of being selfish or manipulative, even though these are actually his own behaviors. This technique serves to shift responsibility and portray himself as the victim. Emotional effects on children. The emotional impact of a narcissistic father on his children is often profound and long-lasting. Children raised in such an environment frequently struggle with low self-esteem, a distorted self-image, and difficulty maintaining healthy, stable relationships. 1. Low self-esteem. Because the narcissistic father ignores or minimizes his children's emotional needs, many children develop a deep-seated sense of inadequacy. They feel like they are never good enough, no matter how hard they try. This low self-esteem can manifest in adulthood as self-doubt, insecurity, and perfectionism. 2. Difficulty building healthy relationships. Children of narcissistic fathers often have difficulty building and maintaining healthy relationships. Because they are used to being manipulated and controlled, they tend to either repeat toxic relationship patterns themselves or find themselves in relationships with other narcissistic individuals. They may have difficulty building trust and often feel emotionally unfulfilled or misunderstood in relationships. 3. Anxiety and insecurity. Living under the constant control and manipulation of a narcissistic father often leads to chronic feelings of anxiety and insecurity. These children grow up in an unstable emotional environment where they never know what will happen next. This insecurity can lead to constant vigilance, anxiety disorders, and a feeling of constantly having to be on guard in adulthood. 4. Codependency. Many children of narcissistic fathers develop codependency. This means they suppress their own needs and desires in order to meet the needs of others because that's how they've been taught. They often define their worth by their ability to please or be there for others, ignoring their own emotional needs in the process. 5. Difficulty developing one's own identity. A narcissistic father often tries to control his children's identities by forcing them to fulfill his own unfulfilled desires. This leads to the children having difficulty developing their own identities. They often don't know who they really are or what they want in life because they are accustomed to conforming to their father's expectations. The invisible legacy. Narcissistic wounds. The legacy of a narcissistic father is often not directly visible, as the scars he leaves behind are emotional and psychological. These wounds are invisible to outsiders, but they have a profound and lasting impact on the affected children. The invisible legacy of narcissistic fathers manifests itself in the emotional and mental stress that often accompanies the children well beyond childhood. Narcissistic wounds not only influence how these children see the world, but also how they experience themselves and their relationships in adulthood. This invisible legacy is usually complex and interwoven. Children of narcissistic fathers grow up in an environment where their emotional needs are ignored or even actively suppressed. Instead, they are often manipulated, used, or treated as instruments to fulfill their father's narcissistic needs. This type of emotional neglect and abuse leaves deep psychological scars that are often difficult to recognize and heal. A key aspect of this legacy is a distorted perception of one's own identity and self-worth. Children raised by a narcissistic father often grow up feeling inadequate, that their needs are unimportant, or that they only deserve love and affection if they meet their father's expectations. This creates deep insecurity and a lack of self-esteem that can persist into adulthood. These wounds are particularly insidious because they can manifest in a variety of ways. Some children of narcissistic fathers become extremely ambitious and constantly seek to prove themselves in order to fill the inner emptiness created by the lack of genuine parental approval. Others fall in the opposite direction, developing depressive tendencies, struggling with self-doubt, or finding themselves in relationships that reproduce the toxic patterns of their childhood. The narcissistic dynamic and its long-term consequences. The dynamics of a narcissistic relationship, especially between a narcissistic father and his children, are complex and often characterized by power games, emotional manipulation, and a lack of authentic parental bonding. These dynamics affect the children in a variety of ways and often have serious long-term consequences. A narcissistic father demands unconditional admiration and loyalty from his children. He views his children as extensions of his own ego and expects them to put his needs above their own. Children growing up in such an environment quickly learn that they will only receive affection or recognition if they meet their father's expectations. These conditions create an insecure attachment that has long-term effects on the children's emotional well-being. One of the most serious consequences of this narcissistic dynamic is the inability to set healthy boundaries. Children raised in a narcissistic environment often don't learn what it means to protect their own needs or maintain a healthy distance. Instead, they frequently assume the role of provider or savior, feeling responsible for the emotional well-being of their narcissistic father. This codependency leads to difficulties in setting healthy boundaries or recognizing when they are being emotionally exploited, even in their adult relationships. Furthermore, the narcissistic dynamic often leads to inner conflict and emotional confusion. Children of narcissistic fathers often experience contradictory messages. On the one hand, they are expected to be perfect and fulfill their father's expectations, but on the other hand, they are regularly belittled and devalued if they fail to meet these expectations. These contradictory messages led to deep inner conflict and an inability to develop a clear self-image. The long-term consequences of this narcissistic dynamic can manifest in various ways. Some people develop a strong need for external validation and success to compensate for their inner feelings of inadequacy. Others suffer from anxiety, depression, or chronic stress because they constantly feel like they aren't enough or are bound to fail. Still others have difficulty allowing emotional intimacy or trusting because they learned in childhood that emotional closeness is always associated with pain and manipulation. Self-doubt, fear and emotional dependence. One of the most profound effects a narcissistic father has on his children is the development of chronic self-doubt, anxiety, and emotional dependence. These negative emotions are often the direct result of the emotional abuse and manipulation the child experienced in the relationship with the narcissistic father. Self-doubt is a common consequence of a child being constantly criticized, belittled, or ignored. Narcissistic fathers tend to undermine their children's achievements or emotionally manipulate them to keep them in a constant state of insecurity. A child growing up in such an environment often begins to doubt their own abilities and worth. They develop a sense of inadequacy that is deeply embedded in their self-image and prevents them from reaching their full potential in adulthood. Anxiety is another common companion to the emotional wounds caused by narcissistic fathers. This anxiety can manifest itself in a variety of ways, as a constant worry about not meeting others' expectations, a fear of rejection, or excessive concern about what other people think of oneself. This anxiety is often rooted in the unpredictable and manipulative nature of the narcissistic father, which leaves the child in constant uncertainty about whether they are being loved or punished. Emotional dependence is perhaps one of the most profound and damaging effects. Children of narcissistic fathers often learn that their emotional security and self-esteem depend on the validation and approval of others. They develop a strong dependence on other people's opinions and feelings because they learned in childhood that their own feelings and needs are unimportant. This emotional dependence can lead to difficulty making decisions on their own in adulthood or to feeling trapped and unable to assert themselves in relationships. These three factors, self-doubt, fear, and emotional dependence, often act like an invisible chain that prevents affected individuals from leading a fulfilling and self-determined life. They feel trapped by the patterns they developed as children, and it often takes considerable effort to break these chains and free themselves from the emotional wounds of a narcissistic father. To recover from these effects, it is crucial to recognize and acknowledge these wounds. Healing means processing the emotional pain and developing new, healthy patterns. This can be done through therapy, self-reflection, and the conscious decision to love and accept yourself, regardless of the expectations or manipulation of others. Ultimately, the path to healing is long, but it is possible. By confronting the narcissistic wounds and learning to refocus on one's own needs and emotions, one can begin to regain control over one's life and create a future free of emotional dependence and insecurity. First steps toward self-liberation. Breaking free from the shackles left behind by a narcissistic father is a complex and often painful process. It requires courage, determination, and patience to free yourself from the emotional and psychological effects of this relationship. The first step on this path to self-liberation is recognizing and accepting reality. This means clearly seeing the dynamics of your relationship with your narcissistic father, understanding your own feelings, and taking the necessary steps to break free from the emotional control this relationship may still exert over you. Accepting reality isn't easy. Often, people raised in narcissistic families have spent years trying to suppress or minimize the truth in order to maintain their relationship with their narcissistic parent. This repression can manifest itself in many forms, such as rationalizing the abusive behavior or attempting to save or change the narcissistic father. But the path to self-liberation begins with the realization that you must look at the situation realistically in order to heal. Recognize and accept reality. Recognizing your father's behavior. The first step to accepting reality is to clearly recognize your narcissistic father's behavior. Many people tend to excuse or rationalize the behavior of a narcissistic parent, especially because they were raised in a constant state of emotional manipulation. It can be difficult to admit that someone who was supposed to be responsible for your care and love has emotionally abused you. Narcissistic fathers tend to view their children as extensions of themselves. They place enormous pressure on their children to meet their own expectations and often use manipulation to ensure they maintain control over their children. This can take the form of blame, emotional blackmail, or even the outright denial of affection if the children don't live up to expectations. Recognizing this behavior means acknowledging the reality. Your father may have been emotionally abusive, controlling, and manipulative. This realization is often painful because it shatters the illusion of a normal or loving father-child relationship. However, it is an essential step toward understanding the true dynamics of the relationship and accepting that you are not responsible for your father's behavior. Understanding the emotional burden. Once you've identified your father's behavior, it's important to understand the emotional impact this behavior has had on you. Children of narcissistic fathers often carry a heavy emotional burden, which can manifest as low self-esteem, chronic insecurity, anxiety, and emotional dependency. It's important to recognize that the negative feelings you harbor about yourself, like feeling inadequate or constantly having to prove you deserve love and approval, are not your own. They are the result of the emotional manipulation and abuse you experienced at the hands of your narcissistic father. These negative beliefs were instilled in you, but they are not yours. The next step is to accept this emotional distress without judging yourself. It's completely normal to have suffered psychological and emotional damage in such a relationship. Accepting this reality is the first step toward healing. It means developing compassion for yourself and allowing yourself to feel and process your emotions instead of continuing to suppress or ignore them. Stop saving the narcissistic father. Another important aspect of acknowledging and accepting reality is to stop trying to save your narcissistic father. Many children of narcissistic parents develop a strong need to fix or change their parent. They believe that if they just do enough or behave a certain way, they can gain the narcissistic father's affection and understanding. However, this way of thinking is a trap. A narcissistic father won't change unless he recognizes his own behavior and voluntarily seeks help. It's not your job to save or change your father, nor is it your fault that he behaves the way he does. A big step toward self-liberation is to let go of responsibility for his emotional problems and focus on your own healing. Acknowledging reality means giving up hope that your narcissistic father will one day become the person you've always wanted him to be. This can be incredibly painful, as it often means giving up the dream of an ideal father-child relationship. But this acceptance is necessary to create the emotional space you need for your own healing, setting boundaries and developing self-protection. After acknowledging reality, the next step is to set healthy boundaries to protect yourself emotionally. Setting boundaries is especially important if you continue to have contact with your narcissistic father. Narcissistic people generally don't respect natural boundaries, so it's crucial to establish clear and firm rules for your interactions. This might mean minimizing contact, distancing yourself emotionally, or even cutting off contact altogether if it contributes to your well-being. Setting boundaries is not an act of cruelty, but rather an act of self-care. You have the right to protect yourself from further emotional harm, and it's crucial that you consistently maintain those boundaries. Setting boundaries may be uncomfortable and difficult at first, especially if you're used to complying with your father's wishes to avoid conflict. But it's a necessary step to regaining control over your own life. You'll learn over time that you have permission to put your own needs and emotions first. Cultivate self-love and self-compassion. Another crucial step toward self-liberation is cultivating self-love and self-compassion. Children of narcissistic fathers tend to be harsh on themselves and condemn themselves for their own emotional wounds. It's important to recognize this negative self-talk and replace it with loving and supportive thoughts. Self-love means treating yourself with the same care and compassion you would give a friend in need. It means taking your own needs seriously and seeing yourself as valuable and lovable, regardless of what your narcissistic father may have taught you. Self-compassion is especially important when you make mistakes or experience setbacks on your healing journey. Healing isn't a linear process, and there will be times when old wounds resurface. Instead of judging yourself for this, be patient with yourself and recognize that healing takes time. Conclusion. The first steps toward self-liberation are often the hardest. Accepting reality, recognizing your narcissistic father's behavior, understanding your emotional wounds, and stopping trying to save your father are crucial milestones on the path to healing. By setting healthy boundaries and cultivating self-love and self-compassion, you begin to regain control of your life and break free from the emotional chains that have held you back for so long. Understanding and healing the inner child. Working with the inner child is a central approach in psychotherapy and self-healing, especially for people who experienced emotional abuse or neglect in childhood. The inner child represents those parts of us that were emotionally injured in childhood and remained unfulfilled into adulthood. It is the part of us that still seeks love, security, acceptance, and protection. All those things we may not have received sufficiently in our childhood. If you grew up with a narcissistic father, you may have learned early on to suppress your own needs or view them as unimportant. In a narcissistic family structure, your father's needs and desires likely took center stage, while your own feelings were ignored, devalued, or dismissed as irrelevant. These painful experiences leave scars on your psyche that can deeply hurt your inner child. Understanding and healing your inner child means acknowledging these wounds and nurturing the part of you that seeks emotional fulfillment. This requires a great deal of self-reflection, patience, and compassion for yourself. Here are some key steps that can help you understand your inner child and begin the healing process. Recognizing the inner child. The first step on the path to healing your inner child is to recognize it in the first place. Many people are unaware that they carry a wounded inner child within them. This inner child can manifest itself in various aspects of your life, such as unhealthy relationship patterns, constant self-doubt, or emotional reactions that, at first glance, seem excessive or inappropriate. The inner child is the part of you that may still be stuck in old childhood patterns. It's the part that suddenly fears rejection or abandonment in conflict situations, or that strongly craves recognition and validation. These emotional reactions often stem from unresolved childhood experiences and are signs that your inner child is yearning for healing. To recognize your inner child, you can start by observing your emotional reactions in different life situations. Ask yourself, are there times when I suddenly feel helpless, worthless, or unwanted for no apparent reason? In such moments, your inner child often reacts. The part of you that experienced these feelings in childhood and is still searching for emotional security. Get in touch with your inner child. After recognizing your inner child, the next step is to connect with it. This can be a challenging and emotional experience, as you may be confronted with old wounds and painful memories. But this confrontation is necessary to facilitate healing. One way to connect with your inner child is to consciously take time to reflect on your childhood. You can do this through meditation, journaling, or visualizing your younger self. Imagine meeting your younger self. What does this child look like? How do they feel? What do they need in this moment? By imagining yourself meeting your inner child, you can begin to build a healing relationship with this part of yourself. Imagine yourself hugging the child, comforting them, and reassuring them that they are now safe. This visualization exercise can help you establish an emotional connection with your inner child and give them the love and support they may not have received in the past. Healing the inner child. Healing your inner child is an ongoing process that requires time and patience. Here are some approaches that can help you heal your inner child. Develop self-compassion. One of the most important steps to healing your inner child is developing self-compassion. Many people who experienced emotional abuse as children tend to judge themselves and ignore their own needs. However, it's crucial that you learn to treat yourself with compassion and respect your own needs. Treat yourself the way you would treat a wounded child, with patience, care, and love. Establish new beliefs. As a child, you may have developed beliefs about yourself and the world based on the distorted messages of your narcissistic father. These negative beliefs might suggest that you are not enough, that you must deserve love, or that your needs are unimportant. To heal your inner child, it is important to identify these old beliefs and replace them with new, healthy ones. This can be done through affirmations, cognitive restructuring, or therapy. Giving yourself the love you were missing. A key part of healing is giving yourself the love and nurturing you didn't receive as a child. This can be done through simple self-care practices, like regularly attending to your emotional and physical needs, setting boundaries, or allowing yourself to experience joy and pleasure without guilt. By giving yourself this love, you begin to heal the wounds of your inner child. Seek professional help. Sometimes the wounds of your inner child are so deep that professional support is necessary. Therapy can help you work through your childhood traumas and develop healthy coping skills. Working with a therapist who specializes in childhood trauma and narcissistic abuse, in particular, can help you heal deeper emotional wounds and find new ways to shape your life. Integration of the inner child. The final step in working with your inner child is to integrate and accept this part of yourself. Your inner child will always remain a part of you, but it no longer needs to be trapped in pain and hurt. By healing your inner child, you can integrate it into your life as a source of strength and joy. This process of integration means that you no longer see your inner child as something deficient or problematic, but rather as a valuable part of you that contributes to who you are today. You can learn to listen to your inner child's needs and give them what they need, while remaining present in your life as an adult. Healing your inner child can help you live a more fulfilling, authentic life. You'll learn to respect your own needs, build healthier relationships, and find the emotional security within yourself you've been searching for so long. Setting boundaries and developing self-protection. Setting boundaries is a fundamental aspect of self-protection and emotional healing, especially for people who grew up in a relationship with a narcissistic father or other narcissistic individual. Setting boundaries means establishing personal boundaries that must not be crossed and clearly defining what behaviors and actions are and are not acceptable. This is one of the most important steps for breaking free from the emotional control and manipulation of a narcissistic parent and developing healthy self-care. People who grew up in a narcissistic family often have difficulty setting clear boundaries because they were never taught how to do so. Narcissistic parents, especially fathers, tend to disregard their children's emotional and psychological boundaries. They manipulate, control, and override these boundaries to satisfy their own needs. As a result, the children grow up in an environment where they don't learn to protect themselves or prioritize their own needs. Setting boundaries therefore requires breaking old patterns and developing a new awareness of one's own well-being. It means taking responsibility for oneself and protecting oneself from further emotional harm. Why clear boundaries are so important. 1. Self-protection and emotional security. The main reason setting boundaries is so important is self-protection. Boundaries are essential to protect yourself from further manipulation, control, or emotional abuse. When you set clear boundaries, you draw a line that clearly defines what you will and will not tolerate in your relationships. These boundaries give you the power to protect your emotional well-being and identify and stop toxic behaviors before they can cause harm. Narcissistic people often deliberately cross the boundaries of others to exert power and control over them. By setting clear boundaries, you send a strong message that you no longer accept this type of behavior. While this may cause conflict or tension, especially if the narcissistic parent tries to circumvent these boundaries, it is a necessary step to protect yourself and prevent emotional harm. Emotional security means feeling safe and protected in your relationships. It means knowing your needs are respected and that you are able to make your own decisions without fear of manipulation or control. Setting boundaries gives you back control over your own emotional security and prevents you from becoming a victim of further emotional exploitation. 2. Regain control of your life. Another reason setting boundaries is so important is regaining control over your own life. Narcissistic fathers tend to control their children's lives well into adulthood, whether through direct manipulation or subtle emotional blackmail. When you set clear boundaries, you begin to regain control over your own life. By setting boundaries, you determine how you want to be treated and what behaviors you will accept in your relationships. You realize that you have the power to control your own life and that you are no longer at the mercy of your narcissistic father. This can be a liberating and powerful moment that helps you shape your life on your own terms. Boundaries also give you the ability to say no without feeling guilty. Narcissistic parents often manipulate their children by making them feel guilty when they don't comply with their wishes. By learning to set clear boundaries, you strengthen your ability to say no when something isn't in your best interest and you take responsibility for your own well-being. 3. Protection from codependency and emotional exploitation. Codependency is a common problem among people raised in a narcissistic family. They often feel responsible for the emotional needs of their narcissistic parent and put their own needs and desires aside to satisfy the other. This codependency can become deeply ingrained in their behavior and relationships, leading them to find themselves in toxic relationships where they are emotionally exploited. Setting boundaries helps break this codependency. It allows you to clearly define where your responsibility ends and where the responsibility of others begins. You learn that you are not responsible for the emotional well-being of your narcissistic father or others and that you have the right to put your own needs and feelings first. Setting boundaries also protects you from emotional exploitation. Narcissistic fathers tend to ignore their children's feelings and needs or exploit them to satisfy their own needs. By setting clear boundaries, you make it clear that you are no longer willing to be emotionally exploited. You protect yourself from further harm and begin to see yourself as valuable and important. 4. Promote healthy relationships. Setting boundaries is not only an act of self-protection, but also an essential prerequisite for healthy relationships. Healthy relationships are based on mutual respect, trust, and understanding. In such a relationship, the boundaries of both partners are respected, and there is a balance between give and take. When you set clear boundaries, you lay the foundation for healthy and respectful relationships. You show others how you want to be treated and give them the opportunity to respect those boundaries. This not only strengthens your relationships but also your self-esteem, as you realize that you deserve to be treated with respect. In healthy relationships, boundaries are not rigid but flexible and are negotiated in an ongoing dialogue between partners. Setting and respecting boundaries promotes open and honest communication and helps avoid misunderstandings and conflicts. 5. Development of self-esteem and self-love. Setting boundaries is also an expression of self-worth and self-love. It shows that you respect yourself enough to protect your own needs and no longer allow yourself to be emotionally exploited. By setting boundaries, you make it clear that you value your own needs and desires just as much as those of others. Self-love means being willing to take responsibility for your own well-being and no longer allowing yourself to be guided by the expectations or manipulation of others. Setting boundaries is an important step on the path to self-love, as it helps you acknowledge and respect your own feelings and needs. By setting clear boundaries, you not only strengthen your self-esteem but also promote emotional growth and healing. You learn to see yourself as a valuable individual who has the right to be treated with respect and love. In summary, setting boundaries is crucial for developing self-protection, ensuring emotional safety, and breaking free from the shackles of a narcissistic father. Setting boundaries is a powerful act of self-care that will help you build healthy relationships, overcome codependency, and regain control of your life. Techniques to create healthy distance. Creating healthy distance from a narcissistic parent or other toxic relationships is a crucial step toward healing and self-protection. Healthy distance doesn't necessarily mean cutting off contact completely. although this may be necessary in some cases, but rather removing yourself emotionally and psychologically from the person to the point where their behavior no longer negatively affects you. This process requires mindfulness, clarity, and the use of various techniques to help you protect yourself while preserving your emotional resources. Here are some techniques that can help you create healthy distance. 1. Emotional detachment. Emotional distancing means internally distancing yourself from the emotional reactions and manipulative behaviors of the narcissistic father. This is often one of the most important and difficult techniques, as narcissistic people tend to elicit strong emotional reactions, be it through guilt, anger, or confusion. To practice emotional detachment, you can create an inner distance. Imagine that you are building an invisible wall between you and the narcissistic father's emotional attacks or attempts at manipulation. This wall protects your inner feelings and prevents negative comments from reaching you. Rationalize. Try to view your father's behavior objectively instead of reacting emotionally. Recognize that his behavior says more about him and his own insecurities than about you. This way, you can avoid getting drawn into his drama. Practice mindfulness. Mindfulness helps you stay present in the moment and recognize emotional reactions before they spiral out of control. By consciously observing your emotions, you can prevent them from overwhelming you and instead act calmly and thoughtfully. 2. Limited contact. Low contact. One of the most effective techniques for creating healthy distance from a narcissistic father is reducing contact. This doesn't necessarily mean cutting off the relationship completely, but rather controlling how often and in what situations you interact with him. Choose your interactions. Limit contact to the bare minimum and consider in advance when and how you will interact with your father. Avoid spontaneous visits or phone calls that occur without planning, as these can often lead to stressful or manipulative conversations. Set clear boundaries. Determine how long you're willing to tolerate conversations or visits. If you sense an interaction is becoming negative, be prepared to politely but firmly end the conversation or leave the room. Maintain neutrality. Keep your conversations factual and superficial, avoiding bringing up personal or emotional topics that could lead to manipulation or conflict. 3. Gray rock method. The gray rock method is a technique in which you intentionally become uninteresting and emotionless in order to avoid providing emotional sustenance to the narcissistic father. Narcissists often thrive on emotional reactions, be it anger, frustration, or even excessive attention. By acting like a gray rock, you deprive him of this source of energy. Remain uninvolved. Respond to your father's provocations or attempts at emotional manipulation with neutral, unemotional responses. Show neither enthusiasm nor anger, but remain calm and uninterested. Answer briefly and concisely. Avoid getting drawn into long discussions. Answer questions concisely and objectively, without getting emotional or getting into personal details. Hiding emotions. Avoid visible emotional reactions such as anger, sadness, or frustration, which the narcissistic father could use to further manipulate you. This method will help you reduce the narcissist's interest in you and discourage him from exerting further emotional pressure on you. 4. Mental preparation and visualization. Another effective technique for creating healthy distance is mentally preparing for potential interactions with the narcissistic father. This involves visualizing the encounter and mentally practicing how you will respond to manipulation and provocative behavior. Play through scenarios. Consider in advance which situations could become uncomfortable or stressful and mentally practice how you will react. Imagine yourself remaining calm and collected even if your father tries to manipulate you. Visualize your boundaries. Imagine yourself in an emotional safe space that protects you from negative influences. This space is your mental boundary, which you defend by remaining calm and not giving in to provocations. Use relaxation techniques. Before and after interactions, you can use breathing exercises or meditation to calm yourself and stabilize yourself emotionally. This will help you stay centered and calm, even if the interaction becomes uncomfortable. 5. Clear communication and consequences. An important technique for creating healthy distance is to clearly communicate your boundaries and establish consequences if those boundaries are crossed. Be direct and clear. State your boundaries clearly and unambiguously. For example, I will not tolerate you belittling me. If that happens, I will end the conversation. Enforce consequences. It's important to stay consistent and enforce consequences when your boundaries are violated. This might mean ending the conversation, leaving the room, or reducing contact for a while. Avoid justifications. Explain your decisions, but don't justify them. You have the right to set your boundaries without defending or explaining them. Clear communication is a sign of strength and self-respect. 6. Seek self-care and support. Creating healthy distance requires emotional energy and determination, so it's important to regularly practice self-care and seek support. Establish self-care routines. Build regular self-care routines into your daily life, whether through exercise, meditation, hobbies, or time with people who are good for you. Professional support, therapy or counseling can help you deal with the emotional challenges that come with setting boundaries and creating healthy distance. Network of supporters. Surround yourself with people who understand your situation and support you. They can help you think clearly and assert your boundaries in difficult moments. Conclusion. Creating healthy distance from a narcissistic father is an essential step toward self-liberation and healing. Emotional boundaries. Limited contact. The Greystone method. Mental preparation. Clear communication, and consistent self-care are techniques that will help you protect yourself and regain control over your own life. By applying these methods, you strengthen your ability to break through toxic dynamics and focus on your own well-being. Learning to let go. The emotional farewell. The emotional separation from a narcissistic father is one of the most difficult and yet most important phases in the healing process. It means breaking the emotional bond that has often developed over years of manipulation, control, and emotional exploitation. Although letting go plays a crucial role in finding freedom and inner peace, this process is emotionally extremely challenging. For many people, letting go means not only saying goodbye to a toxic relationship, but also giving up hope that the father will change or that they might receive the love and acceptance they long for. Why it is so difficult to break away. Breaking an emotional dependency on a narcissistic father is so difficult because the relationship involves deeply ingrained emotional patterns and psychological dynamics. Here are some of the main reasons why letting go is so difficult. 1. Emotional manipulation and dependence. Narcissistic fathers often manipulate their children's emotions to keep them dependent. Through techniques such as gaslighting, blame, or emotional abuse, they create an environment in which the child constantly feels inadequate or responsible for the father's emotional well-being. This manipulation leads to a deep emotional dependency that makes it difficult to end the relationship or detach emotionally. This dependency is often built up over years, so the child learns to put their own needs and feelings aside for the benefit of the father. Letting go means breaking through this years of programming and learning to restore their own emotional independence. However, this process is emotionally stressful, as it is often associated with feelings of guilt, fear of rejection, and the loss of the familial bond. 2. The hope for change. Many children of narcissistic fathers cling to the hope that their father will one day realize how much he has harmed them and change. This hope is often deeply rooted, having motivated the child for many years to remain in the relationship despite the emotional abuse. The idea that the father might one day change gives the child the illusion of control and allows them to endure the pain. Letting go means giving up that hope and accepting the reality that the narcissistic father is unlikely to change. This step is incredibly painful, as it involves losing the fantasy of a loving and healthy father-child relationship. It takes courage and acceptance to let go of the illusion and see the relationship as it truly is. 3. Guilt and loyalty. Feelings of guilt and a deep sense of loyalty to the narcissistic father are further obstacles to letting go. Children of narcissistic fathers have often been raised to put their father's well-being above their own. They have learned that it is their job to make their father happy, and they feel guilty when they try to distance themselves or stand up for themselves. These feelings of guilt can significantly slow the healing process, as the child feels selfish or disloyal if they try to free themselves emotionally. They may also fear disappointing their father or even being bad if they distance themselves from the toxic relationship. These emotional conflicts make it difficult to fully break away. 4. The need for recognition and love. Another reason why letting go is so difficult lies in the deep human need for recognition and love, especially from a parent. Children of narcissistic fathers often spend their lives yearning for the love and recognition they were denied in childhood. They hope that they can win their father's love through certain behaviors or achievements. Letting go means giving up that hope and accepting that the longed-for recognition and love will likely never come. This loss can be deeply painful, as it is coupled with the painful realization that the father is unable to provide the unconditional love the child craves. Steps to overcome emotional dependence. While letting go is difficult, it's not impossible. It requires conscious steps to overcome emotional dependence and find inner peace. Here are some concrete steps that can help you navigate this process. 1. Accept reality. The first step to overcoming emotional dependency is accepting the reality of your relationship with your narcissistic father. This means letting go of the illusion that you can change him or that you'll ever receive the unconditional love and acceptance you crave. It requires allowing yourself to feel the pain of disappointment and understanding that the responsibility for healing lies with you, not your father. By accepting reality, you take the first step toward overcoming emotional dependence and regaining your own emotional freedom. 2. Set boundaries and create distance. A key step in overcoming emotional dependency is setting clear boundaries and creating emotional distance. This may mean reducing contact with your narcissistic father or, in some cases, cutting him off altogether. Setting boundaries helps protect you emotionally and prevent you from being drawn further into the toxic dynamic. If a complete break in contact is not possible, you can at least maintain emotional distance by focusing on your own needs and not giving in to your father's manipulations. 3. Emotional healing and self-care. Overcoming emotional dependency also requires you to actively pursue your emotional healing. This means prioritizing self-care and developing healthy coping mechanisms that help you heal the emotional wounds caused by your relationship with your narcissistic father. Therapy can be an important part of this process, helping you work through old wounds, challenge your beliefs, and develop new, healthy patterns. Additionally, self-care in the form of activities like meditation, exercise, creative hobbies, or time in nature can help you grow emotionally and find inner peace. 4. Seek support. Overcoming emotional dependency is a challenging process, and it's important to seek support. This can be through therapy, support groups, or talking to friends and family members who understand your situation and can support you. The path to healing is often less lonely when you have people around you who listen to you, encourage you, and help you carry the emotional burden. 5. Learn to love yourself. The final and perhaps most important step in overcoming emotional dependency is learning to love yourself. This means freeing yourself from the beliefs instilled in you by your narcissistic father, that you are not enough, that you don't deserve love, or that you are only valuable if you meet his expectations. Self-love requires you to accept yourself as you are, regardless of the expectations or opinions of others. It means recognizing that you are valuable and lovable simply because you are you. Conclusion. Emotionally separating from a narcissistic father is a long and challenging process that requires courage, determination, and self-care. While it's difficult to break free from emotional dependence, it's possible by accepting reality, setting healthy boundaries, pursuing emotional healing, seeking support, and learning to love yourself. Each of these steps brings you closer to inner peace and emotional freedom. Build self-love and self-esteem. Building self-love and self-esteem is a fundamental and necessary step in the healing process, especially for people who grew up in a relationship with a narcissistic father. Narcissistic parents, especially fathers, often leave their children with a deep sense of inadequacy and low self-worth through their manipulation, control, and emotional exploitation. To heal this emotional damage, children must learn to love themselves and recognize their own worth, regardless of the validation or behavior of others. However, self-love and self-worth are not simply concepts or states that are suddenly achieved. They require conscious work and continuous effort. The path to achieving them begins with self-acceptance, the first step on the path to true inner healing. The power of self-acceptance. Self-acceptance is the foundation for building self-love and self-worth. It means accepting yourself as you are, with all your strengths, weaknesses, flaws, and imperfections. Self-acceptance is not the same as complacency or giving up on the desire for personal growth. Rather, it means accepting the reality of your being without self-judgment or criticism. 1. Letting go of inner criticism. Many people who grew up in a narcissistic environment have developed a strong inner critic that dominates their thoughts and emotions. This inner voice is often the result of the constant belittling and criticism they experienced from their narcissistic father. The power of self-acceptance lies in recognizing and letting go of this inner critic. It means treating yourself with compassion and acknowledging that you are valuable despite your challenges and mistakes. An important step on the path to self-acceptance is to consciously pay attention to your inner voice and stop negative self-talk. This can be achieved through positive affirmations, mindfulness, or practicing self-compassion. When you learn to quiet this critical voice, You open the space for self-acceptance and healing. 2. Acceptance of one's own past. Another aspect of self-acceptance is accepting one's past. Many people raised by a narcissistic father tend to feel ashamed or judged for the mistakes and challenges of their past. They may blame themselves for the way they responded to their father's manipulations or for their own emotional vulnerability. Self-acceptance means accepting this past without self-judgment. It means recognizing that you did the best you could in a difficult situation. Accepting the past allows you to focus on the here and now and live your life from a place of acceptance and peace. 3. Take responsibility for your own well-being. Self-acceptance also means taking responsibility for your own well-being. This requires recognizing that you have the power to shape your life and take care of your emotional and mental well-being. Although you may have suffered from your narcissistic father's manipulation and emotional abuse in the past, the responsibility for your healing and happiness now lies with you. Through self-acceptance, you realize that you have the power to rewrite your own story and live a life based on self-love and self-worth. It's a process that requires patience and determination, but it's necessary to find peace and fulfillment. Ways to strengthen self-love. After laying the foundations of self-acceptance, the next step is to actively strengthen your self-love. There are many ways to do this, and everyone will find different approaches that work best for them. Here are some concrete ways you can strengthen your self-love. 1. Cultivate positive self-talk. One of the most effective ways to cultivate self-love is to develop positive self-talk. This means consciously monitoring your own thoughts and paying attention to how you talk to yourself. Instead of criticizing yourself for mistakes or failures, practice speaking to yourself in a kind and supportive way. Positive affirmations can be a valuable aid here. They help you challenge the negative beliefs you have about yourself and replace them with positive, empowering statements. Examples of affirmations might be, I am valuable and lovable just the way I am, or I deserve to be treated well. By repeating these positive messages, you begin to change your self-image and strengthen your self-love. 2. Develop self-care routines. Self-care is a central component of self-love. It means actively taking care of your physical, emotional, and mental well-being. Self-care can be practiced in many ways, through healthy eating, regular exercise, adequate sleep, relaxation techniques, or pursuing hobbies and interests that bring you joy. By regularly incorporating self-care routines into your daily routine, you send yourself the message that you are worthy of being treated well. These conscious actions strengthen your sense of self-worth and promote your emotional health. 3. Forgive yourself. Self-love also means forgiving yourself. Many people carry feelings of guilt or regret for past decisions or actions. These negative emotions can pose a major obstacle to developing self-love, as they keep you stuck in the past and make it difficult to fully accept yourself. Forgiving yourself means developing compassion for yourself and acknowledging that you've done your best in every moment of your life. Forgiveness allows you to let go of old wounds and create space for love and healing. It requires you to extend the same grace and forgiveness to yourself that you would give to others. 4. Set and respect boundaries. An important aspect of self-love is setting and respecting boundaries. Having healthy boundaries means valuing your own needs and feelings and protecting them from the expectations and demands of others. It shows that you respect yourself enough to ensure you are not emotionally or physically exploited. Setting boundaries can be difficult at first. especially if you're used to putting others' needs above your own. But it's a crucial step in developing self-love and protecting yourself. By setting clear boundaries and consistently maintaining them, you build your self-esteem and show yourself that you're worthy of respect. 5. Develop gratitude for yourself. Gratitude is a powerful practice that can help you cultivate self-love. Instead of focusing on your mistakes or weaknesses, practice being thankful for the things you do well that make you the unique person you are. This might mean regularly maintaining a gratitude list where you note down things you appreciate and love about yourself. By developing gratitude for yourself, you shift your perspective and begin to see yourself in a positive light. This promotes a sense of inner contentment and strengthens your self-love. Conclusion. Building self-love and self-worth is an important and healing process, especially for those who have been emotionally damaged by a narcissistic father. The power of self-acceptance lies in viewing yourself with compassion and non-judgment and taking responsibility for your own well-being. Through positive self-talk, self-care, forgiveness, setting boundaries, and practicing gratitude, you can strengthen your self-love and build a fulfilling life based on inner peace and emotional health. Redefining relationships. People who grew up with a narcissistic father often develop a distorted view of interpersonal relationships. Narcissistic relationships are typically characterized by power imbalances, manipulation, and emotional dependency. Children from such backgrounds often unconsciously adopt these toxic patterns and carry them into their own adult relationships. Therefore, it is crucial to redefine relationships and understand what truly constitutes healthy relationships. Redefining relationships means breaking old, unhealthy dynamics and developing new, positive behavior patterns. This is an important step on the path to healing and building a fulfilling social network. It requires learning new skills and recognizing toxic behaviors, as well as establishing clear values and boundaries for future relationships. Recognizing and building healthy relationships. Healthy relationships are fundamentally different from the unhealthy patterns prevalent in narcissistic families. They are based on mutual respect, trust, communication, and emotional support. For people who have experienced narcissistic abuse, it can initially be difficult to recognize these qualities or imagine what a truly healthy relationship should look like. However, there are specific characteristics that define a healthy relationship. 1. Mutual respect. Respect is the foundation of a healthy relationship. Mutual respect means that both partners value and accept each other's opinions, feelings, and boundaries. In a relationship based on respect, there is no room for manipulation or power games. Both partners feel heard and valued, regardless of disagreements or conflicts. People raised in narcissistic environments often have to learn what respect truly means. They may be accustomed to having their opinions and feelings ignored or devalued. Recognizing respect in a relationship begins with respecting yourself and insisting that others do the same. 2. Healthy communication. Healthy relationships are characterized by open, honest, and respectful communication. In narcissistic relationships, communication is often used as a weapon, be it through silence, emotional manipulation, or constant criticism. In healthy relationships, however, communication is a means of connection, understanding, and conflict resolution. An important aspect of healthy communication is active listening. Both partners are willing to listen to each other without interrupting and strive to understand the other's perspective. The goal is not to manipulate or dominate the other, but to create a genuine connection and clarify misunderstandings. 3. Support and encouragement. In a healthy relationship, partners support and encourage each other to pursue their goals and be their best selves. This support is unconditional and not contingent on one partner meeting the other's expectations. People from narcissistic families often feel that they only receive love and recognition if they meet certain expectations. In a healthy relationship, however, support is independent of performance or behavior. Both partners want the other to grow and succeed, and they offer emotional support and encouragement without conditions. 4. Emotional and physical security. A healthy relationship provides emotional and physical safety. This means both partners feel they can open up and be vulnerable without fear of judgment, criticism, or abuse. Emotional safety allows partners to talk honestly about their feelings without fear that they will be used against them. Physical safety refers to ensuring that there is no room for physical abuse and that both partners feel confident that their boundaries will be respected. This is especially important for people who experienced violence or abuse in childhood. 5. Balance between closeness and autonomy. A healthy relationship strikes a balance between closeness and autonomy. A toxic relationship can result in either extreme emotional dependence or distance and neglect. In a healthy relationship, however, there's room for both partners to maintain their individuality while maintaining a close emotional connection. Autonomy means that both partners have their own interests, hobbies, and friendships and make time for themselves without jeopardizing the relationship. At the same time, they know they can count on each other in difficult times and are strong together. Develop trust and closeness without fear. For people who grew up in narcissistic relationships, developing trust and emotional closeness can be a significant challenge. Narcissistic relationships are often characterized by emotional insecurity, distrust, and manipulation. As a result, many people who grew up in such environments have difficulty building trust with others and allowing emotional intimacy. They often live in fear of being hurt or exploited. Developing trust and closeness without fear takes time and conscious effort. Here are some steps that can help you overcome these emotional barriers. 1. Healing old wounds. Before you can truly develop trust and closeness without fear, it's important to heal the emotional wounds that stem from your past experiences with narcissistic relationships. These wounds can be deep-seated and include old beliefs like I'm unlovable or I can't trust anyone. Therapy, support groups, and personal reflection can help you question and overcome these old beliefs. The more you heal your wounds, the better you'll be able to trust others and allow for genuine closeness. 2. Build trust gradually. Trust must be built slowly and organically in any relationship. It's important to consciously take time to develop trust rather than forcing yourself to feel it right away. This means taking small steps and paying attention to how the other person responds. People who respect your trust and don't take advantage of it are the ones you can open up to gradually. It's also helpful to remind yourself that it's okay to show vulnerability. Being vulnerable doesn't mean being weak or naive, but rather being open and authentic. 3. Communication about fears. Open communication about your fears and insecurities can help you develop trust and closeness. If you're able to talk honestly with your partner or friends about your fears, they can better understand where they come from and help you overcome them. A trusting partner will respond to your fears patiently and understandingly without judging you. This communication creates a deeper emotional connection and helps you build trust in the relationship. 4. Take small risks. Building trust requires you to be willing to take small emotional risks. This means gradually opening up and trusting your partner or circle of friends without fear of the consequences. With each small step you take, you strengthen your trust in others and prove to yourself that you are capable of developing healthy emotional closeness. These small risks can be as simple as sharing a personal story or expressing your feelings. Over time, these small steps will help you take bigger risks and engage more deeply in your relationships. 5. Let go of control. In narcissistic relationships, you're often left feeling like you need to control others to feel safe. In healthy relationships, however, trust means letting go of control and trusting that the other person won't hurt you. Letting go of control is an important step in developing closeness without fear. It takes courage, but it's also liberating. By letting go of control, you allow yourself to be authentic and experience your relationships in a deeper and more fulfilling way. Conclusion. Redefining relationships is a powerful step on the path to healing. Healthy relationships are built on respect, support, communication, and emotional safety. Trusting others and developing emotional intimacy without fear takes time and patience. But with conscious effort, you can break free from old patterns and build fulfilling, healthy connections with others. The more you invest in yourself and your relationships, the stronger and healthier they become. Your path to inner freedom. Inner freedom is the state of being free from the emotional and psychological chains that bound you in the past, especially the negative influences of a narcissistic father or other toxic relationships. It means regaining control over your own life and finding your own path, free from the expectations, judgments, and manipulation of others. Inner freedom is more than just physical independence. It means being emotionally and mentally capable of making your own decisions and shaping your life according to your own values and beliefs. The path to inner freedom is an individual process that looks different for each person. It often requires you to let go of old patterns and beliefs instilled in you in childhood and to begin to discover and live your true self. This process involves self-discovery and authenticity, which in turn are the key to living life by your own rules. Self-discovery and the importance of authenticity. 1. What does self-discovery mean? Self-discovery is the process by which you discover who you truly are, what you want, and what values are important to you. For people who grew up in a narcissistic family, this process can be particularly challenging, as they often learn to conform to their narcissistic father's expectations and ignore their own needs and desires. As a result, they may no longer know who they truly are or what they want from life. Self-discovery begins with giving yourself time and space to explore yourself without external influences. It means questioning old patterns and beliefs and asking yourself what you truly want from life. This journey of self-discovery can be supported through various practices, such as meditation, journaling, creative expression, or working with a therapist or coach. 2. The role of authenticity. Authenticity means living in alignment with your true self. Being who you truly are, without pretending or conforming to others' expectations. Being authentic means identifying your own values, beliefs, and desires and staying true to them, even if that means potentially going against societal norms or familial expectations. For people raised under narcissistic influence, authenticity is often something they were never able to fully develop. They may have learned to maintain a facade or behave as expected in order to gain the love or approval of their narcissistic father. Being authentic means dropping that facade and finding the courage to show your true self, regardless of what others think. The importance of authenticity cannot be underestimated when it comes to achieving inner freedom. When you live authentically, you live in alignment with your inner core and no longer feel trapped by the expectations or judgments of others. Authenticity is the key to living a life that brings you joy, fulfillment, and meaning. 3. Steps to self-discovery and authenticity. The path to self-discovery and authenticity begins with the conscious decision to reflect on your life and question what's truly important to you. Here are some concrete steps that can help you. Reflection. Take time regularly to reflect on your life, your experiences, and your values. What is truly important to you? Which beliefs are your own, and which have been imposed on you by others? Experiment with new experiences. Be open to new opportunities and experiences that help you get to know yourself better. Try new hobbies, activities, or social circles to find out what you truly enjoy. Set boundaries. Authenticity requires you to set clear boundaries and not allow yourself to be influenced by the expectations or desires of others. Learn to say no and focus on what's truly important to you. Trust your intuition. Living authentically means trusting your inner voice. Learn to listen to your intuition and use it to guide your decisions, rather than being influenced by external opinions. Live life by your own rules. After beginning the journey of self-discovery and authenticity, the next step is to live life by your own rules. This means shaping your life in a way that works best for you, rather than following the expectations of others or societal norms. It takes courage and determination, but it's an essential component of inner freedom. 1. What does it mean to live by your own rules? Living life by your own rules means setting your own values, goals, and priorities, rather than letting outside influences dictate how your life should look. It means making decisions based on your own needs and desires, not what others expect of you. For many people who come from narcissistic families, this means letting go of old behaviors and beliefs that told them they weren't good enough or that they had to conform to others' expectations to be loved. Living by your own rules means breaking these old patterns and giving yourself permission to live the way that's right for you. 2. Self-determination and personal responsibility. Living by your own rules also means taking full responsibility for your own life. This requires you to take control of your decisions and actions and be willing to accept the consequences of your choices, whether positive or negative. Self-determination means that you have the power to shape and influence your life. It means that you are no longer a victim of circumstances or the manipulation of others, but that you take control of your own destiny. This gives you the freedom to pursue your own dreams and live a life that fulfills you. 3. Find the courage to be unconventional. Living life by your own rules often requires finding the courage to be unconventional and swim against the grain. It means being willing to take risks to live your own truth, even if that means facing resistance or criticism. This might mean pursuing unconventional career paths, shaping relationships your own way, or making personal choices that don't conform to traditional expectations. What's important is that you're willing to stand up for what you believe in and shape your life in a way that brings you meaning and fulfillment. 4. Find inner fulfillment. Ultimately, living life by your own rules is about finding inner fulfillment. Instead of being driven by external metrics like success, money, or status, you focus on what truly brings you joy and satisfaction. This might mean spending more time with loved ones, pursuing creative projects, or focusing on personal growth and spiritual development. By living your life by your own rules, you create a lifestyle that aligns with your innermost values and goals. You'll find that you experience more joy, peace, and fulfillment because you're living authentically and no longer constrained by the expectations of others. Conclusion. The path to inner freedom begins with self-discovery and authenticity. When you learn who you truly are and what's important to you, you can begin to live your life according to your own rules. This path requires courage, self-determination, and the willingness to let go of old patterns. But ultimately, it leads you to a life that brings you deep inner fulfillment and true freedom. Conclusion and future outlook. At the end of your journey to self-liberation, you are facing a new chapter in your life, one full of possibilities, inner freedom, and emotional health. You've taken the first steps toward breaking free from the shackles of your narcissistic father, healing your wounds, and building a healthy relationship with yourself. But this journey doesn't end here. There is always room for further growth, new insights, and the ongoing work toward living a life of freedom and balance. The question that now arises is, what now? What steps can you take to further strengthen the foundation you've laid and shape your life in a way that continues to bring you inner fulfillment and peace? What now? Steps for the way forward. The transition from a life of emotional dependence to one of freedom and self-determination requires continuous work. Here are some important steps you can take along your journey to further strengthen your inner freedom and well-being. 1. Integration of what has been learned. The first step is to integrate what you've learned along the way into your daily life. You've learned valuable lessons about self-love, healthy boundaries, emotional independence, and authentic relationships. These insights are now part of your inner strength, and it's important to apply them daily. Stay mindful. Continue to pay attention to your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Notice if you fall back into old patterns and remind yourself that you have the tools to make healthy choices. Practice self-care. Continue your self-care routines, whether through meditation, exercise, creative hobbies, or spending time with supportive people. These practices are crucial for maintaining your emotional and mental health. 2. Ongoing healing. Even if you've made great progress, healing doesn't mean the process is ever completely finished. Setbacks may occur, and it's important to give yourself the time and space to continue healing. Ongoing work on your emotional health is key to staying free of old hurts and destructive patterns in the long term. Therapy and support. If you feel you need additional support, don't hesitate to continue working with a therapist or support group. Professional help can help you work through deeper wounds and offer new perspectives on your experiences. Deal with setbacks mindfully. When you experience setbacks, be gentle with yourself. Setbacks are a normal part of the healing process and don't mean you've failed. Rather, they provide an opportunity to learn more deeply and continue to grow. 3. Develop new goals and visions. An important step on your journey forward is to develop new goals and visions for your life. Having freed yourself from old emotional burdens, you now have the freedom to shape your life according to your own ideas. This is an exciting time in which you can realize your dreams and explore new paths. Set goals. Think about which areas of your life you want to develop further. Perhaps you want to pursue new career paths, deepen healthy relationships, express your creativity, or work on your personal development. Create a vision for your future. A clear vision helps you focus on what you truly want to achieve. This might include the kind of life you want to lead, the relationships you want to build, and how you can incorporate your values and passions into your daily life. 4. Strengthen your social network. Another important step is to further expand and strengthen your social network. People who support, encourage, and accompany you on your journey are crucial to your well-being. Relationships based on respect, trust, and mutual support can help you maintain your inner freedom. Seek positive connections. Spend time with people who are good for you and who respect your freedom and authenticity. These people should encourage you to be yourself and support your growth. Give and receive support. A strong social community is built on mutual support. Be willing to help others and accept help when you need it. This fosters deep, fulfilling connections. 5. Learn to be flexible. The path to inner freedom is dynamic, and life will always present you with new challenges and opportunities. A key to lasting well-being is remaining flexible and adapting to change. Inner freedom doesn't mean everything will always go perfectly, but rather developing the ability to cope with life's ups and downs without losing your identity or inner peace. Be open to change. Change is a natural part of life. Learn to accept it and approach it with curiosity and flexibility. Trust the process. Even if you encounter difficulties, trust that you have the inner resources to deal with them. Each step along your journey brings you closer to a deeper understanding of yourself and your inner strength. Your life in freedom and balance. Living in freedom and balance means living a life characterized by both emotional independence and inner stability. This balance is crucial for long-term happiness and fulfillment. Here are some approaches to maintaining this freedom and balance in your life. 1. Emotional freedom. Emotional freedom means fully accepting your emotions without being controlled by them. You are able to feel, understand, and express your feelings in a healthy way without falling back into old, destructive patterns. Be aware of your emotions. Learn to recognize your emotions and give them space. Accept them without judgment and find healthy ways to deal with difficult feelings. Prioritize self-care. Emotional freedom requires regular self-care. Take time to recover, reflect, and strengthen your emotional health. 2. Find inner balance. Inner balance means living in harmony with your own needs, values, and goals. This requires listening to your inner voice and ensuring that you meet both your physical and emotional needs. Set priorities. Make sure you organize your life in a way that aligns with your values. Prioritize the things that truly matter to you and let go of everything else. Maintain boundaries. Maintaining your boundaries will ensure you don't lose balance. This will help you protect yourself and live a healthy life. 3. Live a fulfilling life. Living a life of freedom and balance also means living a fulfilling and meaningful life. This includes pursuing your passions, building relationships that bring you joy, and continually developing yourself. Pursue your passions. Identify what brings you joy in life and invest time and energy in those things. This could be a creative pursuit, a new challenge, or engaging in a cause that's important to you. Continuous growth. Remain open to personal growth and development. learn new skills, develop new perspectives, and be willing to continually improve yourself. Conclusion. The path to inner freedom is a lifelong process that requires continuous learning, growth, and reflection. By integrating what you've learned into your daily life, continuing to work on your healing, setting new goals, and living a life of emotional freedom and balance, you will find long-term fulfillment and inner peace. Living your life of freedom means that you are now in control of your own destiny and have the freedom to live an authentic, fulfilling, and happy life. Disclaimer. The information provided in this book is for informational purposes only and is not intended as a substitute for professional medical advice or treatment. The author and publishers of this book assume no liability for any damages or losses resulting from the use of the information presented in this book. The information contained in this book is based on the current state of medical knowledge at the time of publication and is subject to change due to new findings or developments. It is recommended that you consult a qualified physician or medical professional before using any therapies, treatments, or lifestyle changes mentioned in this book to ensure they are appropriate for your individual situation. The author and publishers of this book assume no responsibility for the accuracy, completeness, or timeliness of the information provided in this book. Any decisions made based on the information presented in this book are the sole responsibility of the reader. The use of any products, techniques, or advice mentioned in this book is at your own risk. It is recommended that you consult a qualified physician or medical professional before using any new products or therapies to discuss potential risks or side effects. By purchasing and using this book, readers agree that neither the author nor the publishers can be held liable for any direct or indirect damages or losses resulting from the application of the information presented in this book. By purchasing and using this book, readers acknowledge that they have read and agree to the above disclaimers. Rights and ownership notice. This audiobook is published and distributed by Testbericht-Institut LLC. All copyrights, publishing rights, distribution rights, audio rights, and related intellectual property rights for this work have been lawfully and exclusively acquired by Testbericht-Institut LLC. Testbericht-Institut LLC is the sole and unrestricted rights holder of this audiobook, including the right to reproduce, distribute, publish, monetize, and publicly perform the content on digital platforms such as YouTube. The original manuscript files, source documents, and contractual acquisition records serve as proof of lawful ownership. The original author and/or their authorized representative, Renovatio LLC, has transferred all relevant rights to Testbericht-Institut LLC in accordance with applicable copyright and publishing law. This ownership applies to all current and future uses of this work, including audio, video, and digital publications. Effective date of rights ownership: the 1st of February 2026. Any unauthorized use, reproduction, re-upload, redistribution, or claiming of this content is strictly prohibited. Copyright Testbericht-Institut LLC. All rights reserved.